Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia Lujan. I'm the Fine Arts instructor here at the Norwalk Senior Center. I grew up here in Norwalk and I've been teaching the Fine Arts class here for 4 years. So I really miss not seeing all the students and seeing everybody here at the Senior Center, but I'm luckily able to bring the class to you, and we're going to be learning today about dreaming the landscape in watercolors. I'm really excited today to teach you some fundamentals that you can apply for various types of art, but we're going to be concentrating on painting, and we're going to be using a photograph of a landscape as reference for our painting today. So with watercolors, I personally like to start off with a sketch, and I usually end up starting off with a small 4.5 by 5-inch sketch of the painting. And for our sketch, we're going to be doing it in black and white. And sometimes I like having the reference of a black and white picture and also our color picture in order to kind of see the different light and darkness, which is also known as the value of the picture. So, you know, the sky, you can tell that it's a lot lighter than the shadows of the trees, for example. And that's something that I'll be showing you how to translate and how to interpret into a sketch. For sake of videoing purposes, I'm going to be doing this with a marker on our board, but I'd like for you guys to try and do it on your small piece of paper at home. But I'm going to go ahead and take this off, and I'm going to be showing you how to do it. So your piece of paper will be a little bit taller than it is wide. So it's going to be very similar to this picture. And on your piece of paper, I really want you to draw out an outline of what your picture looks like. And this really helps out because when you're sketching, you want to make sure that you know what the edges of your paper are going to be. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a second. Like I was saying earlier, we know that the background of the sky is going to be a lot lighter than the shadows and the trees in the front. So when we start out to sketch, you just want to keep that in mind. And it's going to be looking a little bit different with your pencil. You'll have something come out more like this. However, I'm going to show you with the marker how we can get the same effect. So we're going to start off drawing the tree on this left side. And you know, you want to make sure that the outside of your paper, you kind of have an idea of where the half point is for your paper. So my half point is about here and here, more or less. So I want to have this tree on the left side of this half point. So, you know, if you were to fold the picture and have a line come down all the way, that would be the half point. And if you were to fold it this way, this would be the half point. So something that you notice is this background of the picture and the mountains is about that halfway point. So I know that my mountains are going to be about that height. And I know that my tree is going to be on the left side of this midpoint. So that's about the right placement for it. And you also want to draw in the other tree as well. And this one is actually, this is probably not the right point. About right in the middle. And as you go along, you'll find that you'll have to readjust your drawing to make it look more similar to the subject that you're painting. So the subject that I'm painting right now is a landscape, there's some trees, there's a mountain with snow, and a dirt path in the front. So the three different factors that you want to take into mind when you're drawing a landscape is the foreground, middle ground, and the background. So what are these three parts of the landscape? So the foreground is here in the front where we have a tree that's been cut and is lying now on the floor. In the middle ground, we have the bigger two trees that are standing tall. And then in the background, we have the mountains. And even further, we have the sky that's behind the mountains, right? So those three factors are what helps you create a better landscape. And so you want to have all those three in your sketch. So we're going to make some room for this log that's in the front. And it's also about midway. And I'm going to start to try and make the main parts a little bit more dark. I'm drawing in the shadow of this log, the shadows of these two trees. And you can see the shadows on the tree actually curves a little bit. And these shadows are actually from the trees that you can't see on the right side. And this drawing isn't going to look perfect. That's not the point. The intention and the point for you to have a sketch is so that you can plan for your watercolor painting. So this is kind of a test, and it's a way to loosen your hand and get used to drawing and used to painting. And so it's just a way to dive into the painting and start dreaming your landscape. So I'm drawing in some of the branches from the tree. So I'm just continuing to draw the shadows that you see here on the footpath. And I'm using my marker to kind of let you know where that shadow starts and ends. And I'm doing an outline of these different leaves and trees in the background. And sometimes I use this effect, like a dotted line, to help me find where I want to place the tree and the tree branches. And we have some more bushes on this side. So I'm going to be coloring in a little bit of these bushes that are in this area, because you can see, if you squint your eyes a little bit, this area kind of blends in. So like we're seeing here in the black and white image, this is all a similar value, it's all a similar darkness. And so I'm trying to make it so that we have a map in black and white for our painting. And the method that I'm using for this sketch on the whiteboard is a form of cross-hatching. So going to be drawing in a few of these smaller trees in the background. And like I mentioned in the beginning, it's okay that it's not absolutely perfect when we start off, because the point is to have a general map and to kind of get our hands ready for when we start painting. So the different aspects that I emphasized in the beginning were foreground, middle ground, and background. So right now we have this log in the foreground, and these shadows in the foreground. And then we have these tall trees in the middle ground, and the mountain is in the background with the sky. And it's a little bit hard to tell because it's in black and white and it's in marker, but we'll be able to translate this into our drawings pretty well, and I'll show you an example. We're starting off with our sketch, and here we have a picture of what we're drawing again. So it's a landscape. Again, just to emphasize, the main components of a landscape are the foreground. Here we have the log that's laying down on the floor, and the footpath here with the dirt on the floor. That's our foreground. Our middle ground is all of this foliage and these trees, these two big trees, and all these plants right here. Our background are these smaller trees that look a lot smaller than they would in real life. And also our background is this mountainscape with some snow on it. And our furthest background is the sky in the back. So we have our foreground, middle ground, and our background. This is an example of a sketch that I did on paper, and it's a little bit larger size than I asked you all to do. If you want to do it on this large size paper, you can also. But however, it's nice to do it on a small size so that you can have that as reference for your painting. So when we start off, you're welcome to use your pencil to lightly sketch the outlines of your drawing, of your painting, and you'll start to have the outline of a tree branch, the outline of the bark of the tree, and you can also have the outline of the shadows that are coming off of other trees on the side. And so once I have everything outlined, I can start to paint. And the materials that you're going to be using today for painting in watercolors are a few different brushes. So you have a fine brush, an angle brush, and a filbert. You'll also need a cup of water, and this is not for drinking, it's just for using when you're painting with your brushes. You'll also receive a small watercolor kit, which has 8 different colors. You have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, brown, and black. We'll also be including a white watercolor so that you can integrate that with your painting as well. You'll want to make sure to have some paper towels with you so that you can often clean your brush. This is really important for watercolor because you want to make sure that your painting has the most saturated colors and looks vibrant and beautiful. So I really like using these materials because they're very accessible, and that's important because I want you to be able to do this art practice at home and have the different materials that you need in order to make the art that you want to make. So a lot of the times I like to have a board that helps me lean it against the table as I'm drawing and as I'm painting. I'll be using an easel, which is a little bit easier to be able to paint without having to hold my board. So those are different things that you can kind of look for around the house if you have a board, or something stronger and sturdy like a book. But otherwise, I'll be starting off on this painting. So I'm going to start to lay down some color on my watercolor paper, and I'm going to use my angle brush and a little bit of water with just blue. And you'll want to kind of test out how much color there is on a paper towel or another paper. But like I mentioned earlier, it's very important for you to always have your brush clean, and having a few different paper towels next to you, or even a rag works well too, in order to clean your brush and have it ready to mix into another color. So I'm grabbing some water, some of that blue, and I'm starting to lay down some color. So I start very lightly. And you want to start to build up that color. It's important not to start too dark because it's hard to transition back to something a little bit lighter. So with watercolor, it's important to just start light and build as you go along. And I'm grabbing some more water and some more of the blue pigment. And I'm using this tray on the side. So I'm going to use this tray to mix different colors. And you'll find that at the top is probably where there's a little bit more of a darker blue. And towards the bottom, it's a little bit of a lighter blue. So with the bottom, I'm going to be using more water. And in the top, I use some more pigment. And some people don't like the effect of being able to see all the brush strokes, but I find it really interesting, and it kind of personalizes it more so that you can see all the different strokes of your brush. So I'm just working around the outlines of the drawing. Sometimes you'll find that you add too much water and your painting starts to drip. So sometimes if that happens, don't worry. You can kind of grab a paper towel and lift it up a little bit. With darker colors, you probably won't be able to do this as quickly, but personally, I just like to keep some paper towels at hand to make sure that things don't get out of control. Now I'm going to start to add some more color in the foreground. And I'm going to be using some yellow, and like I mentioned, you always want to keep your brush clean. So before I went into the yellow, I cleaned my brush. And when I'm changing the color, I'm cleaning my brush again. Now I'm going to grab some brown and put it on the side of the yellow so that I can start to mix those two colors together and get like a lighter, warmer brown. And if you see, it starts to get a little bit muddy if I don't clean my brush too well. So you always want to clean your brush when you're working with watercolor before you change to a different color. So I'm going to grab some more yellow and mix that with brown. And now I have a really nice earthy yellow tone that I mixed with the yellow and the brown. The majority of the mixture is going to be more yellow than it is brown. So you'll get the hang of that, but like I mentioned earlier, you just want to test out what that color looks like, either on a piece of paper or a napkin like how I'm using. And now I'm going to start to lay down some color on the foreground where the dirt path is. And you'll see that our painting is starting to come to life. So I'm adding some color over here in this middle ground. And in the foreground. And I noticed that this log is actually a very similar color to the ground, so I'm going to add a little bit of that yellow. So you'll find that, you know, I kind of ran out of my mixture. So one thing that can be a little bit frustrating in the beginning is to find that same color again, but don't worry, with time, you'll be able to find those same colors all over again. But in the beginning, you know, you just want to make sure you remember which colors you started out with. So that's going to be yellow. I'm cleaning my brush before I change over. And brown. And now I'm going to mix that yellow and the brown together to get a very similar color. And something that I'm noticing is that this tree that's laying down is actually a little bit more lighter. So I'm going to add some white to this mixture. And you can just hold the paint. This one actually doesn't come with a white watercolor, but we purchased those separately and provided those for your use. So I'm grabbing some white and I'm mixing that into the yellow and brown mixture to get a lighter brown color. And now it kind of has more of a creamy color. Very subtle, but it's there. And I'm using this for the tree that's laying down and also for part of this this tree of the base, the stump. Now I'm going to start to add the brown tones for the tree trunks. I'm grabbing some brown. I'm going to make 2 different piles of brown. And I'm going to use some red to darken it on one of them and to get a warmer brown. So I'm mixing the brown with the red to have a more warm tone. And you can start to see that this is coming forward a lot, which is a good thing because it's in the middle ground, and so we wanted to communicate that it's closer to us than the sky. And I'm just starting to paint some of the branches. I'm trying to more or less stay within the lines of the outlines that I drew with the pencil. There's some trees back here that I want to emphasize, and another tree here. And for this tree in the foreground, I'm actually going to be making it a darker version and a cooler version as well. So I'm grabbing some brown again. Actually going to grab some in here. Oops. I'm going to clean this up. And I'm going to grab a little bit of the green to mix with the brown. Again, I'm going to clean my brush before I mix in there because it's going to get very messy if I don't. So I mixed the brown and the green together. And I think that I originally wanted to use this brown for the branch, but I'm really liking how this color looks, and I'm gonna add it to some of these bushes in the back and the trees leaves in the back. So I'm gonna lay down that color. So I'm grabbing some brown and some green and mixing up some more color for the different areas. In between these trees we have very dark green colors, so I'm gonna lay down a foundation for that, blocking in my different colors. And I'm shifting my brush around to kind of follow along the edge of the tree, or sometimes follow a big path of space so that we can block it in faster. So I'm shifting my angled brush to the left or to the right. And here I didn't actually draw out the cluster of leaves, but I think that I kind of want to add a few more. So I'm going to lay that right on top of that blue that's there, and I think that the mixture of it is going to look kind of interesting. So this is kind of what it looks like to overlay different colors. So I'm grabbing some more of this brown and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of blue and green. And this will give me a deeper brown color, a cooler color, since blue is a cool color in temperature. So I'm gonna lay that color down and go within the outline of this branch at the top. I'm gonna add a little bit more blue to it. And you'll really see that that blue really helps to make that branch come forward a lot more and overlap these two trees. And you can add some more branches now or later. That's up to you and your interpretation. I like to use the angle of the brush and kind of change it around a little bit by turning my brush, by rotating it. And now I'm seeing that there's some spaces within the sky that are still the color of the paper. So I'm going to grab some more water and the blue color. And I think I might add a little bit of the purple into it to get a different type of shade of blue. And I'm just overlaying that color on certain areas. Some of the white paper areas, other parts are right over the previous blue. I think it just adds some more dimension. It also helps to separate that background from the middle ground, which is very important for a landscape, because you really want to illustrate the space that happens from the front to the middle to the back. I'm going to switch brushes back to my angle brush and do some broader strokes. So now I almost have my full picture blocked in. I'm going to add some shadows here in the foreground, and I'll do that by mixing some of the brown and some of the blue. And I'm using a previous mixture And I think I want to add a little bit more blue to it to make it slightly darker. There's also a shadow directly under this tree that's laying down. So I'm going to add that in. And there's a shadow on the actual tree that's laying down as well. And this tree stump has a shadow as well. And I'm just blocking in those different colors. And I still have to fill out this area, so I think I'm going to add some more green here. I grabbed some green and some blue to mix into almost like an emerald kind of color. I'm adding some green here. I think it probably needs a little more brown in it to make it blend in with the landscape a little bit more, so I added some brown. And now you can see that the palette is pretty used up, and I wanted to use some yellow, but I'm going to actually clean it up a little bit before I do that. So the way that you clean your palette, you can grab one of your paper towels that you were using, dip it a little bit in the water, and you just brush it down with some water, and it'll clean right up. I advise not to grab your paint palette and put it under the sink, because it can ruin all of these different colors and they can start blending into each other. So it's really important to just, use a paper towel and clean it up with the paper towel. So I'm grabbing some yellow. Cleaning it. Grabbing some white. And you can see I place it on the side. And I can mix those two together to get a lighter yellow. And I'm gonna make some of these trees in the background a lighter yellow. And some of this ground lighter as well. Now I'm going to add a little bit more brown and blue to this side of the tree to add more of a shadow to the bark of the tree. And I'm just adding it on the left side because you can tell that there's some light coming on the right side. So I'm just adding a shadow to all the different trees in the background. You can start to see that it has more dimension now. So having the light and shadow is very important because it helps to create a clearer form. And here I can see that my shadow isn't dark enough. I'm going to be making that a little bit darker. So I'm going to use some brown and blue. And I think I'm going to use a little bit of the purple too. And I don't always use black because, like I mentioned earlier, it's good to build up the color. And let's see, I'm testing this out here at the bottom. And I think that works well for this bottom shadow, so I'm going to go ahead and place that color. I'm going to grab a little bit more of that color with brown and use it for the top and the side of this tree stump. And now that feels a little bit better in terms of a shadow and light. And I think I'm going to use a little bit of the black with that brown to do an outline on the bottom of the tree stump. And that way you can really tell that it's sitting down on that floor. And I can maybe even add it a little bit throughout. I'm just adding some texture by pouncing my brush a little bit on the paper. And I'm just adding some more leaves on these branches. I think that I'd like to take that artistic liberty and add some more leaves. I think it looks really nice with some leaves on it. And I'm laying it right over. So I'm not actually dragging my brush, I'm just kind of placing it or pouncing it a little bit. So when you're out going on hikes or something like that, outdoors, you can take some pictures while you're out there, and you can imagine how you want to paint that landscape and do this at home as well. So I'm going to paint some of these mountains in the back, and I think I'm going to use some blue and some white. You can see that my brush wasn't the cleanest, but it's okay. I'm going to clean this white after. And now I have this icy gray color that I can use for the background in the mountains. And I'm using this lighter grayish color because I really want to make it seem like it's all the way in the back. I'm going to use some black. And mixing some of this green and black together to get some of these smaller trees in the background. I can see that I could probably use some of this back here in the middle. Right now I'm just grabbing some of that brown to mix in this bottom edge of all those trees so that I get rid of that white line that I had in that area. So my brush is just slightly wet and mixing in a little bit of those colors. I'm adding some more brown to this area to make it slightly darker. My brush has a lot of water in it and a little bit of paint. I think I'm going to add a little bit of brown to the shadows also. And this area is a lot drier than it would be when I first put down the paint. So right now I'm doing this at the very end so that it doesn't blend too much and it kind of lays on top of what color was already there. I can go back into other branches and make those a little bit darker, but you really want to have different colors go all the way around in your composition because it helps to create a more integrated and cohesive painting. And now we have the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. I think I'm going to make this branch up here slightly darker. So I'm adding some more brown with purple so that you can really tell that that branch is coming right in front of those other branches. And it's pretty much purple just being overlaid straight on top of that brown. But now you can really tell that it's in shadow and almost right in front of us, right in front of the landscape. I'm going to use a little bit on this side to make it slightly darker. But now we have all these different shadows working together. And going to add some more texture to these trees in the background. And a little bit of that grayish tone with the blue for that lake in the background. I'm going to use my fine brush to mix a little bit of the blue and the white together to get an icier light blue. And I'm going to add that into some of these shadows within the snow that's up in these mountains. You can also add some texture to the front of the painting by adding some white with the brown and doing some like rocks or pebbles. You can use your fine point brush to kind of draw out the outlines of them and mix white with brown to have them as different texture and blend it in a little bit with your brush. But yeah, in general, this is the foreground, middle ground, and the background for your painting. And those are three really important components of a landscape painting, and that will help you to form your landscape painting and help you dream a landscape. So thank you all for joining us today for our workshop on dreaming in landscape. Today we learned how we can use a reference imagery such as a landscape of the nature, and we used a color version and a black and white version to eventually do a map of our painting, and that really helps us to problem solve anything ahead of time. So like I mentioned earlier, it's so important to be doing a sketch prior to your painting because it really helps you to plan out what you're going to be doing. So the main objectives of today are the foreground, middle ground, and background of a landscape. That's really important. Those are really important components to help you to distinguish the space, so you can really see where the front part is, the middle part, and the background. So the background would be the sky and the mountains. The middle ground is these two big trees, and the foreground is this big area with the dirt path and the tree that's laying down on the floor. So just make sure to do your sketch, and that will really help you out when you start off on your painting. But thank you all so much for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing your paintings, and hopefully you'll be able to take pictures and share those with us. So thank you so much.